Whispers in the Dark. In the depths of the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, a young and ambitious trainee named Clarice Starling was about to embark on a journey that would test her courage, her intellect, and her very sanity. Little did she know her path would cross with one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Starling, haunted by her own troubled past, was determined to prove herself in the male-dominated world of criminal profiling. Tasked with interviewing Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist turned cannibalistic murderer, she found herself drawn into a deadly game of cat and mouse. As Starling delved into Lecter's twisted mind, she uncovered clues that would lead her to another serial killer, Buffalo Bill, who was terrorizing the country with his gruesome murders. With the clock ticking and innocent lives on the line, Starling was forced to confront her own demons as she raced to catch the killer before he struck again. But Lecter, ever the manipulative mastermind, had his own agenda. As he toyed with Starling's emotions and twisted her perceptions, he revealed a dark truth that would shake her to her core. Buffalo Bill, it turned out, was not acting alone. He was part of a larger network of killers, each more deranged and dangerous than the last. And at the center of it all was Lecter himself, orchestrating the chaos from behind bars. As Starling struggled to unravel the truth, she found herself drawn deeper into Lecter's web of deception. With each revelation, she questioned her own sanity and her own motives, unsure of who she could trust. In a final, desperate showdown, Starling confronted Lecter in his cell, determined to extract the information she needed to stop Buffalo Bill once and for all. But Lecter, ever the enigma, had one last trick up his sleeve. He offered her a deal: information in exchange for information. If Starling would reveal her deepest secrets, he would give her the clues she needed to catch Buffalo Bill. Reluctantly, Starling agreed, knowing that she was playing a dangerous game. As the two danced around each other, trading barbs and revelations, Starling began to realize that Lecter held the key to unlocking Buffalo Bill's twisted mind. But with each revelation, she questioned her own motives and her own sanity, unsure of who she could trust. In the end, it was Starling's own instincts and determination that led her to Buffalo Bill's lair. With Lecter's clues in hand, she raced against time to save his latest victim, a young woman named Catherine Martin. In a heart-stopping climax, Starling confronted Buffalo Bill in a dark and dank basement, the screams of his victim echoing in her ears. With nerves of steel and a steady hand, she faced down the monster in front of her, determined to bring him to justice once and for all. As the dust settled and the sun rose over Quantico, Starling emerged victorious, her faith in herself and her abilities stronger than ever. But as she walked away from Buffalo Bill's lair, she knew that the echoes of their encounter would haunt her for the rest of her days. And as she looked back at Lecter's cell, she couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay waiting in the darkness, just beyond her reach. Rosemary's Baby. In the heart of New York City, a young couple, Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse, moved into the Gothic Bramford apartment building, eager to start a new chapter in their lives. Little did they know, their dreams of starting a family would soon become a living nightmare. From the moment they stepped foot into their new home, they were enveloped in an atmosphere of dread and unease. The neighbors whispered in hushed tones, their eyes filled with fear and suspicion. But Rosemary and Guy brushed off their concerns, determined to make a fresh start. But as Rosemary's pregnancy progressed, she began to experience strange and terrifying symptoms. She suffered from intense pain, hallucinations, and vivid nightmares that left her shaken and afraid. Guy, once loving and supportive, seemed distant and preoccupied, spending more and more time with their eccentric neighbors, the Castevets. Rosemary couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on exactly what it was. As her due date approached, Rosemary's fears grew more intense. She became convinced that the Castevets were somehow involved in a dark and sinister conspiracy, but she couldn't prove it. Then, one fateful night, Rosemary's worst fears were realized. She woke up in excruciating pain, her body racked with spasms as she went into labor. With no one else to turn to, she called out to her neighbors for help. But instead of rushing to her aid, the Castevets calmly guided her through the birth. their calm demeanor masking their true intentions. As Rosemary lay in agony, she realized the horrifying truth. Her baby was not a normal child, but the spawn of Satan himself. In a haze of pain and fear, Rosemary gave birth to her son, a monstrous creature with glowing red eyes and a sinister smile. As she looked into his eyes, she knew that her life would never be the same again. In the days that followed, Rosemary struggled to come to terms with the reality of her situation. She was trapped in a living nightmare, forced to care for a child that was not her own, surrounded by people who worshiped the devil. But Rosemary refused to give up hope. With the help of a few trusted allies, she hatched a daring plan to escape the clutches of the Castevets and save her son from a fate worse than death. In a heart-stopping climax, Rosemary confronted the Castevets in their own home, determined to put an end to their reign of terror once and for all. With courage and determination, she faced down the forces of darkness, knowing that her son's life hung in the balance. In the end, Rosemary emerged victorious, her son safe in her arms. But as she looked back at the Bramford, she knew that the echoes of her ordeal would haunt her for the rest of her days. And as she walked away from that dark and sinister place, she vowed never to forget the horrors she had witnessed and the strength she had found within herself to overcome them. Chains of Terror. In the sweltering heat of a scorching Texas summer, a group of 5 young friends embarked on a road trip through the desolate countryside. Little did they know, their journey would take them straight into the heart of darkness, where they would encounter horrors beyond their wildest nightmares. The group, consisting of siblings Sally and Franklin Hardesty, along with their friends Jerry, Kirk, and Pam, set out in their beat-up van in search of adventure. Their destination, the Hardesty family's old homestead, a remote farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. But as they ventured deeper into the Texas wilderness, they stumbled upon an abandoned gas station. Its rusted pumps and broken windows, a grim omen of the terrors that awaited them. Ignoring the warnings of a local drunkard, they pressed on, determined to reach their destination before nightfall. But as darkness descended and the shadows grew long, they found themselves lost in a maze of twisting backroads and overgrown fields. It was then that they stumbled upon a dilapidated farmhouse, its walls adorned with rusted chains and rotting meat. Sensing danger, they attempted to flee, but it was too late. They had walked straight into the lair of Leatherface, a deranged killer who wore a mask made of human skin and wielded a chainsaw with deadly precision. One by one, the group fell victim to Leatherface's insatiable bloodlust, their screams echoing through the night as he mercilessly butchered them with his monstrous weapon. Sally, the lone survivor, fled into the darkness, her heart pounding with terror as she raced to escape the clutches of her deranged captor. But Leatherface was relentless, his chainsaw roaring to life as he pursued her through the darkness. With every step she took, Sally could feel the chains of terror tightening around her, threatening to drag her down into the depths of madness. In a heart-stopping climax, Sally stumbled upon an isolated farmhouse, its walls stained with blood and its floors littered with the remains of Leatherface's victims. With nowhere left to run, she prepared to make her final stand against the deranged killer, knowing that her survival depended on her ability to outwit him at his own game. In a desperate bid for freedom, Sally unleashed a torrent of primal screams, her voice piercing the night as she fought to escape the chains of terror that bound her. And as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, she emerged from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive, her screams echoing through the Texas wilderness as a warning to all who dared to venture into the depths of the unknown. Echoes of Nightmares. In the quiet suburb of Springwood, Ohio, a group of teenagers found themselves haunted by a malevolent force that lurked in the darkest corners of their dreams. Little did they know, their nightmares were about to become all too real as they faced off against a twisted and vengeful spirit known as Freddy Krueger. It began with a series of strange and disturbing dreams, each more terrifying than the last. Nancy Thompson, a bright and resourceful teenager, was the first to realize that something was terribly wrong. She confided in her friends, Tina, Glenn, and Rod, but they dismissed her fears as nothing more than the product of an overactive imagination. But as the nightmares grew more intense, the group realized that they were all experiencing the same terrifying visions. They were being hunted by Freddy Krueger, a sadistic killer who had been burned alive by vengeful parents years earlier. Freddy had found a way to invade their dreams, using their deepest fears and insecurities against them. He delighted in tormenting them, inflicting unspeakable horrors upon them as they slept. As the body count rose and the line between dreams and reality blurred, Nancy and her friends realized that they were running out of time. They had to find a way to stop Freddy before he claimed them all as his victims. But Freddy was a formidable adversary, his powers growing stronger with each passing night. He seemed unstoppable, a nightmare come to life. In a desperate bid for survival, Nancy delved into Freddy's dark past, uncovering secrets that had long been buried. She discovered that Freddy was the bastard son of 100 maniacs, conceived in an asylum and raised in darkness. Armed with this knowledge, Nancy and her friends confronted Freddy in the dream world, determined to put an end to his reign of terror once and for all. But Freddy was not about to go down without a fight. In a heart-stopping climax, Nancy faced off against Freddy in a final showdown, her courage and determination matched only by his sheer malevolence. With the power of her dreams and the strength of her will, she banished Freddy back to the depths of hell, where he belonged. As the sun rose over Springwood, Nancy emerged victorious, her friends safe at last from the horrors that had plagued them. But she knew that Freddy would never truly be gone, his memory haunting her dreams for the rest of her days. And as she looked out at the peaceful suburb of Springwood, she couldn't help but wonder what other nightmares lay waiting in the shadows just beyond her reach. Halloween. In the quiet suburban town of Haddonfield, Illinois, a darkness lurked beneath the surface, waiting patiently for its chance to strike. Little did the residents know, their peaceful community was about to become the hunting ground for one of the most notorious killers in cinematic history, Michael Myers. It began on a cold Halloween night in 1963, when a young Michael Myers, just 6 years old, brutally murdered his older sister Judith in their family home, sentenced to a psychiatric hospital. Michael spent the next 15 years in silence, his dark and twisted mind festering with thoughts of revenge. But on a fateful Halloween night in 1978, Michael escaped from the hospital and returned to Haddonfield, his childhood home. Driven by an insatiable bloodlust, he embarked on a killing spree that would leave the town reeling in terror. As the body count rose, the residents of Haddonfield found themselves gripped by fear, unsure of who would be Michael's next victim. Dr. Sam Loomis, Michael's psychiatrist, was determined to stop him before it was too late, but he knew that he was up against a force of pure evil. Meanwhile, Laurie Strode, a shy and bookish teenager, found herself targeted by Michael for reasons she couldn't understand. As she fought to survive, she uncovered dark secrets about her own past, secrets that would change her life forever. With every passing hour, Michael grew stronger, his thirst for blood driving him to new heights of depravity. He seemed unstoppable, a relentless force of nature that could not be reasoned with or stopped. In a heart-stopping climax, Laurie faced off against Michael in a final showdown, her courage and determination matched only by his sheer malevolence. With the help of Dr. Loomis, she lured Michael into a trap, using her wits and her strength to outsmart him at every turn. But Michael was not about to go down without a fight. In a desperate bid for survival, Laurie fought for her life, knowing that the fate of Haddonfield rested in her hands. As the sun rose over Haddonfield, Laurie emerged victorious, her friends safe at last from the horrors that had plagued them. But she knew that Michael would never truly be gone, his memory haunting her dreams for the rest of her days. And as she looked out at the peaceful suburban town of Haddonfield, she couldn't help but wonder what other nightmares lay waiting in the shadows, just beyond her reach. For in the darkness, evil never truly dies. The Shining. In the heart of the Colorado Rockies, nestled among the snow-capped peaks, stood the imposing Overlook Hotel, a sprawling and isolated resort that would soon become the setting for one of the most terrifying tales of horror ever told. Jack Torrance, a struggling writer and recovering alcoholic, saw the job as the hotel's winter caretaker as a chance to rebuild his fractured family and reignite his stalled writing career. Along with his wife Wendy and their young son Danny, Jack moved into the hotel as the winter snows began to fall, unaware of the darkness that lurked within its walls. From the moment they arrived, the Torrance family was plagued by strange and unsettling occurrences. Danny, gifted with a psychic ability known as the Shining, was tormented by terrifying visions of the hotel's dark past, visions that seemed to be coming to life before his very eyes. As the days stretched into weeks, the hotel's grip on the Torrance family tightened, driving Jack to the brink of madness and beyond. He became obsessed with the hotel's sordid history, convinced that it held the key to unlocking his own creative genius. But as Jack delved deeper into the hotel's secrets, he unwittingly unleashed a malevolent force that had been lying dormant for decades. The hotel itself seemed to come alive, its walls pulsing with a dark and sinister energy that fed off the fear and despair of its inhabitants. As the winter storms raged outside, Jack descended into madness, his mind consumed by the same darkness that had claimed so many before him. He became a pawn of the hotel's malevolent spirit, a willing instrument of its dark and twisted will. Meanwhile, Wendy and Danny fought for their lives, trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. With each passing day, the hotel's grip on them grew stronger, its hunger for their souls insatiable. In a final desperate bid for survival, Wendy and Danny confronted Jack in a terrifying showdown that would leave them forever scarred. With the help of Dick Halloran, the hotel's cook and a fellow psychic, they fought to break free from the hotel's icy grip and escape the horrors that lay within. In a pulse-pounding climax, the Torrance family faced off against the malevolent force that had haunted them for so long. With courage and determination, they fought to reclaim their lives and escape the darkness that threatened to consume them. As the sun rose over the snow-covered mountains, the Torrance family emerged from the darkness, battered and bruised, but alive. But as they looked back at the Overlook Hotel, they knew that the echoes of their ordeal would haunt them for the rest of their days. And as they walked away from that dark and sinister place, they vowed never to forget the horrors they had witnessed and the strength they had found within themselves to overcome them.